If you're wondering why should Apple be this crazy, why can't they just sit quiet, and why should they have to bring in this liquid glass design update and celebrate it so much? And why should they actually get all this hate about accessibility when Apple actually has those human interface guidelines talking a lot about accessibility and has been the pioneer of accessibility, being very strict about it, not allowing the apps which do not have proper accessibility guidelines, rejecting them and all that stuff. And Apple has this much history. How can Apple simply go and launch something called as a glass and then make everything very such poor accessibility? Right? If at all you're wondering in this particular manner, then this is my answer to you. So I'll start with explaining about what I actually posted on LinkedIn and the whole vision about what I see Apple is trying to do. And then I have an amazing answer in terms of the responsibility, not just what Apple has, but all of us have in actually making this change happen out there. Because the reality which we are living in has to change, has to become much simpler. And as an experienced designer, I would love for this to happen as quickly as possible. And the responsibility is there in our hands today, not tomorrow. It is there today. And I want you to watch the video till the end, because what I'm going to talk about is completely going to change the perspectives of how you've been thinking till now. See, all these years you have been like, users, and now you are starting to think like designers, as aspiring designers, and you will be the future of how experienced designers are going to do things going forward. And that's why this is very, very important to you to have these perspectives. And let me tell you one very, very important thing, that as experienced designers, you will be innovators. What do I mean by innovators? I'm not using this term in a very loose manner. I'm using this term backwards from what we call as a technology adoption curve. Every time a new technology comes into being, there is this thing called technology adoption curve. You can actually Google it and understand about it. But in brief, I can explain it to you like a curve, right? Which has, every time new technology comes in, it has these new early adopters or innovators who try to play with it. These are the people who actually bring in a lot of change. But the curve is so flat that it takes a lot of years, even for mixed reality or for AI. They have been there from a long time. But by the time they actually move to the next stage, we call as early adopters or the early majority and late, and then goes beyond to late majority and laggards and all that stuff. By the time it actually reaches this, the curve is very flat and takes a lot of years. And it takes a lot of experiments and a lot of innovation coming from many people. And it is very important that people like us are responsible for bringing that change and bringing this new technology, which we know for sure is going to make our lives better, is going to bring in the journeys, bring in the way we are actually trying to solve problems and everything, very natural for us. When we know that, it is our responsibility to bring this from very, very early enthusiasts to that new and early majority. It is our responsibility. Therefore, this video will make absolute sense for you, and I want you to watch it till the end. And then also have the debates with me and have these discussions with me, and let's actually go and design for this amazing future. Of course, it's not just a debate which I'm having with someone over here. It's also a debate with the entire design. All the people, design folks, are actually talking. Many senior design circles have also been actively talking about it, debating about this. And yeah, so these are some of the replies I have. Firstly, people talking about accessibility and using it as a way to dismiss what is happening over here. Firstly, accessibility can be fixed. Okay, this is something which is, I give you a different kind of an argument. Okay, I'll give you an argument at two levels. The first level is, even with these non-glass interfaces, whatever interface we have today, the solid or gradient or whatever interfaces we have, we are still working towards fixing accessibility. It's not a joke that today, accessibility is absolutely stuck, and it's not like that. It is still trying to fix it because we are using interfaces which are not very natural. That's the first point to then play with. So accessibility is something which we're still working towards. Okay. And certainly we will be working towards accessibility even for this new innovation, right? Because we are trying to force fit what we are seeing today into the story interface. So accessibility can be solved. But the second layer of argument is it is not Apple's responsibility alone to fix accessibility. Yes, they are going to be the pioneers, they are going to introduce this to us, but it is the responsibility of the developers and designers to adopt this and work towards making things more accessible, understanding the larger vision which is going to happen, which is what I'm going to talk about, right? So, what is this larger vision, Anadi? Why are you so much bent onto this? Why can't you, the arguments literally say, why can't we just focus on solving the problems of today? And then why are we just literally thinking so much into the future when the current situation itself, there are so many problems we have to solve, right? Now, yes, I understand where this argument is coming from, and I generally believe there are a lot of designers also who think in this particular manner that today's problems are the most important problems to be solved. But there is also a school of thought of a lot of other designers who say that there are enough people to solve today's problems. There needs to be these designers, these people who will actually start thinking and laying foundation steps for the future. And I feel out of anyone, Apple always had this intent to actually lay the steps into the future, right? I say that it is Apple's responsibility, and Apple takes this responsibility very well doing this, even if they get blamed for doing this. And I'll explain you why. The reason why someone has to take this responsibility is because it is very important that you guard the usability of people. You need to make sure that their journeys are very natural. You need to make sure that people, whatever they're trying to use, it is very easy and very, very amazing for them to actually have their journeys in as natural way as possible. This is a responsibility. Now, as a company which actually values this, and as a company which builds OSs and interfaces and tools and devices which have all these things as your primary focus, it has to be one of the most important points of your agenda, that is to be responsible for actually making this change happen. Because if you think of it, for me as a designer, I am feeling very limited by using this particular 2D device. I feel it is ridiculous in many points of time that we are trying to force fit solving our problems to this particular 2D device, right? I'm not saying no to all the innovations which I've done, but I'm trying to say that it's time that we start taking our shift from thinking that we are trying to solve problems only using this limited 2D device. See, your argument of why now, why think about the future is, you need to understand that someone has to bring in the future. The future automatically will not happen. It is the pioneers who will actually have this strong intent and make sure that a large number of people will follow and bring in this change. It has to be someone, and it is generally Apple, right? Now, because until that is done, everyone will continue. Humans naturally tend to be very safe. Humans always resist change. And as long as someone doesn't take this particular step, it is not going to change, right? See, and then you would ask me, hey, Aladit, is this complete capitalistic intent? Are they wanting to just make a lot of money? I don't care about it. Generally, capitalistic intent drives a lot of things, and I don't want to get into this innovation. If you have read history, has also been brought in for very, very wrong reasons. Generally, it was wars. The relationship between how wars and industrial revolution have happened and stuff like that, right? So I don't want to comment on the reason why large companies have this intent to bring in the technology. But the argument which I want to bring in over here is the need for having interfaces in our natural journey and natural use case of how we do things. Because I want to be more human and less dependent on doing things outside of what I do naturally as a human to solve my problems. That is something which really, really drives me in this entire conversation. I need to be doing things like a natural human. I need to be walking, I need to be talking, I need to be using things in the natural world I am in. And the interfaces are what needs to bend and come into my journeys. I don't have to bring myself into actually going to those interfaces and doing. So that's why I feel strong urge for someone to actually bring in this particular change. See, I'm not just commenting on this liquid glass design alone. I'm also commenting on this entire vision which Apple or even Meta or Google, many of these companies today have this vision and they're trying to actually bring it over here. But The thing is, you can't simply critique these things only on the fact that a step has been taken, because a step is always necessary. In fact, that is how innovation actually happens. You don't know at what point of time which experiment does your innovation lead to that big shift and everyone following you. You have no clarity. Frankly speaking, even launching of the iPhone is just an experiment. It could have been a failure as well, because until then, everyone using these feature phones, keyboards were separated from the screens, and that is very natural, and everyone got used to it. And when you actually start thinking that, I'll make everything into a touch device, that too without requiring any stylus and stuff like that, right? I will only make people use their finger, and I will only keep one button to this entire phone. When all these things were introduced to the first iPhone, there were backlashes. People are like, what crazy stuff are you even talking about? This will probably immediately fail. And people also ask the question in terms of, hey, why are you not literally solving for today's, like, why don't you make that exact existing touch keyboard in a much better manner when the entire world is actually struggling to press those small keys? Why don't you make those keys bigger or solve the problems in a much better manner? Was a question which a lot of people asked, right? But you don't really always fall into the traps of some of the temporary backlashes, which will always happen, because people and media will always say things. They'll always find faults with whatever you're trying to do. You need to understand that majority of the people cannot see the depth at what innovators try to do. You cannot stop yourself from innovating things just because a bunch of people cannot understand what you're trying to do. That is not how you behave. If you identify yourself as an innovator, you must surpass all these things and still do things for the larger cause which you have in your mind, right? With that being said, see, the hate generally comes because the hate for Apple trying to do this generally comes because of what is marketed. Whenever some iPhone is sold, or let us say some MacBook is presented and stuff like that, they say, what, flashy bezels, doing this, doing that, and stuff like that. Whenever it is marketed, even the liquid glass, whenever the whole thing actually came out to market as it looks so good, it looks amazing and stuff like that. The language is what really irritates people, because this language is generally addressed towards a large number of masses who do not understand the depths of what they're actually trying to do, right? And it is okay, it happens, right? But we as intellectuals, we need to really understand that we need to see we literally need to see through that particular glass which is being presented out there. I love the way it is actually coming out both, in an ironical manner. We need to see through that particular glass. See, I'll also talk about this AI output. People are actually saying that, hey, you know what, Apple is still trying to catch up in this entire AI game. Google is doing this much, and all this. I love the innovation which Google is bringing in ChatGPT. Everyone is bringing, OpenAI is bringing in. I just love these innovations. I'm not saying that. But putting a blame on Apple that it is trying to catch up, I'll actually clarify that. Because I have watched the last year's presentation by Google when they have actually introduced this Apple Intelligence. And let me tell you, me and my friend Charan, both of us were watching this, and we were just out of our minds completely. Not just because of all the artificial features they were brought in, but we literally saw through the glass. Let me tell you what, right? See, firstly, when you are an OS company, when you are a platform, a big platform where 100 millions of apps are being developed, how do you think? Do you think like, hey, you know what? Oh, you know what? OpenAI is doing something like this. Google is doing something like this. Hey, let me just go and build another LLM, build another app over there, and just make myself be seen as if I am competing in this particular AI race. Do I just do some gimmicky things and stuff? Of course, I've also done something that introduce some Genmoji and stuff like that at Image Playground. So do I just do these gimmicky things, or do I think in this particular manner? Right? Let me tell you. See, the way I will think is, millions of apps are going to be developed using this platform. Everyone is going to attempt trying to solve a lot of problems over there. Why don't they build a platform which allows everyone to go and use this new interaction pattern, which was not possible earlier? What is this new interaction pattern? The interaction pattern of computer understanding your intent and computer communicating back its intent. This is a new interaction pattern, because that's what is happening if you're using ChatGPT or your AI. That is what is happening. See, let me tell you, like, machine learning is not new. It has been there, right? Computers were intelligent. It's not that the intelligence was not there. The intelligence was always there, but the intelligence could not communicate with you nor take your your thought process and have a conversation with you. That was not possible before. Now it is possible with whatever you are seeing with ChatGPT, right? Now that this happens, do you just catch up by just building one more of this? Or do you think so foundationally that I will build something in such a way that every app which is developed utilizes this capability out there? Right? When they launched this, when they spoke about this app intent concept, it just blew our minds, guys. And let me tell you, you're not realizing what is actually happening over here. That is, as a human, as I was talking about you bending towards a particular technology, it should not be like that. If you think of it, right? Today, every app which is on your phone needs to go and understand you in an independent manner. See, I worked for Amazon for a lot of years, and I know the struggles in the app actually trying to understand the way you are, your journey, what you're trying to do right now, and when to actually intervene in your journey and help you and support you. Today, every app on your phone is actually trying to do this, and they're not talking to one another, and there is no way like than going and looking at your history and the way you're using it. That's when a company like Apple, a platform, takes a responsibility and says, hey, you know what? Just because of I'm leaving all of you guys to figure all these by yourselves, this is not solving the customer's problem. As a platform, it's my responsibility to think a layer deeper. You know what? Since this intent is possible right now, since the interaction layer has opened up very much, people are also used to communicating their intent, and I have the capability to communicate back the intent. Why don't I build the technology in such a way that I will understand the human for you? I will continuously understand what they are trying to do in their lives, and I will give this to all the apps in such a way that they will communicate to one another and communicate with me, and then we'll communicate back to the human in their context. We will do the hard work of understanding them. Let the human not do all the hard work of trying to explain themselves. I will do this. I will build myself in such foundational manner that the human will, everything will be easy for them. On top of it, I will struggle to explain to people that this is going to be on device. This is going to make everything very secure. We are doing it in a very responsible manner, but ultimately all we're trying to do is make the whole device in a completely accessible manner. When you have this kind of a vision with the kind of AI which you want to build, the entire intelligence which you want to build around it, it is going to take some time. It is absolutely going to take some time because this vision is not an easy thing to actually go and market yourself as a flashy whatever I'm doing too. And we need to give Apple that particular time, right? And they also know it. They know that when they're actually going to launch this, the entire ecosystem of how people are going to solve problems with all the apps and innovations they're trying to bring in, it is all going to change. Just imagine, guys, when we initially had these apps as platform, everything changed. The way we eat today, the way we book cabs today, the way we travel today, everything changed today because of someone's vision back then that there needs to be some applications and there needs to be ways. And today a lot of problems were solved because of that particular innovation. Today, if Apple doesn't bring in this particular innovation, tomorrow we will not have a better way of interacting and we will start living in a very, very constrained manner even 10 years later. That is why I will any day at Apple prioritize 10 years ahead and make sure that next 10 years this will happen rather than waiting and continuously solving only today's problems and then waiting for one day when tomorrow someone else will bring in this innovation and then I will offer them something. This is how you think as a visionary. This is the reason why I absolutely support all the steps which they're trying to take, not just Apple. I've always rooted for what Apple is trying to do, what Meta is trying to do, what Google is trying to do in this particular space, because for God's sake, I do not want to be limited to this 2D interface to do everything else in my life. I want the technology to come naturally into the way I interact with things, right? So this is my answer for the debate. If this has inspired you, then let's have more debates and let's have amazing conversations. See you again.